there, mamas. It's your girl, Nina Shea, aka Mama Bear. Welcome to the Mama Bear podcast. Today, we have such a great conversation with an amazing guest. We are talking about a conversation. It's a topic that every family needs to discuss, but not many are. And I certainly wish I had just recently. We're talking about planning for major unexpected life changes. And today, I'm joined by the talented, beautiful, Mrs. Dawn Norman. She is a seasoned attorney whose passion is to work with families to help them prepare for those life changes, including end of life as well as some medical emergencies. So I wanted to bring her in the den first, Mrs. Dawn Norman. She is Mama Bear to three children herself, and she is the founder of My Death Plan LLC. She is college send off gift creator. She created a fabulous program to send your kids off to college, as well as the goodbye gift, which protects our legacy and gives us peace of mind. This conversation is something for every mama and dads out there too. So please help me welcome Mrs. Dawn Norman.
Thank you so much, Nina. I appreciate the flowery introduction. I'm happy to be here with you today.
Absolutely. It is such a pleasure. And I have to say, we talked about this for a brief time when I discovered this plan, and I couldn't, tell you just how much it resonated with me. So I was happy to have you come on and join and have this conversation with our guests. So please tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to create such a wonderful program for families.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, I am a practicing lawyer and I am a litigator, actually. And so most people know litigators as dispute lawyers. And so I've been in that space for a couple of decades, but it's actually not my litigation that brought me to death advocacy. It was really a personal family tragedy that brought me here. My mother got remarried and her husband died 16 days later. So as you can imagine, not just as a daughter, but also as the family attorney, I'm often asked to roll my sleeves up and get involved in family affairs that I may not necessarily have experience in. And so I did that with my mom, and we're actually still going through that. And so out of that experience, this kind of passion project was birthed. He loved my mom, but he hadn't done any planning. So that love did not extend beyond his life here. So my goal is really about helping others not end up in the same situation we were in, and to really focus on what we can do today very practically to make sure that our loved ones can grieve without the pressure and the chaos.
Absolutely. Well, I think, this is so invaluable. And I wanted to kind of start our conversation with what is the goodbye gift first? And how did it come to be? Well, you've already explained that, what motivated you to do this, but what is the goodbye gift?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started this, I was thinking, what would be very practical and accessible for everyone? And so I originally launched My Death Plan as an e-workbook.
Okay.
It was very well received, and people wanted to do more. And they were really engaged around the topic. So I started brainstorming about what would get people more actively engaged and not just purchasing a workbook, but actually doing it. And so that's how the goodbye gift was birthed. It really is a full service experience. So it takes the workbook and it turns it into a web-based tool. So it's dynamic. You can work with it. You can update it. You can access it via your phone or on your internet browser from your computer. It's the same roadmap that you find in My Death Plan, but we added a special feature, and that is the ability to upload your voice, videos for your loved ones, your documents, and save them all in one place so that when your loved ones are grieving, they have one place to go. And so it's stored securely, and you designate and decide who you want to receive that information.
So I wish I had come across your services and this program. When I in November, when I lost my mom, it was unexpected, and I had to travel. To another state and just kind of jump in and try to figure out where everything was, where the papers were. Okay, was this set up? If that was not set up, then who do I call? There were so many things to do. And my brother lived there in town, but even he did not know exactly where everything was. So
Mhm.
when you mentioned being able to have all of your documentation in one place, where not just the person who, may have passed on, or who may be ill and too ill to handle things, for family members and others to be able to access it is amazing, and so helpful. And a lot of people don't think about that. I think there is a stigma, or there's just the fear of having the conversation sometimes, and even preparing, for such events. So
Yeah.
I wish I had this, back in November, for
Yeah, well,
sure.
the beauty of it is you can start yours now so that the
Yeah,
people you leave behind won't
yes,
be in
I'd
the
be
same situation, right? Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
absolutely.
So I call it the goodbye gift because it really is a gift that you're
Mhm,
leaving your loved ones, right? I think
mhm,
a lot of us are focused on legacy and how we transfer wealth from one generation to the next. Well, part of that is end of life planning. Because if
mhm,
we don't know where your assets are, then we can't deal with them properly, right? And if you're
right,
not thinking about your assets during your lifetime and how those will pass, then I
mhm.
think you're doing, your loved ones a disservice. So out of that came the goodbye gift. So I'm really looking forward to getting people engaged with the tool and developing it and expanding its capability as well.
Right. Well, I'm interested in learning more about it and actually implementing that plan, because I did see how necessary it was for me to prepare. And, I have one son. And so I just thought about him having to take all of that on. It's,
Right.
it is more than want to even think about. So that is wonderful. But then you also created a plan just recently with regard to our kids, and the college send off toolkit,
Yes.
which I thought was amazing. So tell us about that.
Okay, so I think all the journey is connected. So I'll piece it
Mhm,
together for your audience in a way that makes sense. So my
mhm,
my primary goal is to destigmatize death
mhm.
and to increase death planning through tools and education. Right. So
Right.
from that mission, the goodbye gift was birthed, as you mentioned. Well, what I've
Mhm,
also learned as I go out and I talk to the community and other organizations and parents is that the cultural barriers and stigmatizing death run so deep. If
mhm.
we wait until later in our life, we're more likely to either procrastinate in doing it or not do it at all because of those barriers.
Right.
So I felt like it was going to be incredibly important as part of my mission to help young people understand the importance of planning, and not just end of life planning, but planning throughout their lives. So that's how the College Send Off Toolkit was birthed. It's
Mhm,
really about talking to students as they embark upon this new milestone, right, of going off to college. It's talking to them about, have you thought about medical emergencies that might happen while you're away? Right. And that gets me into a natural conversation with them about planning for the unexpected, because that's really what all of this is about. So my
mhm,
goal is that by engaging with them early, you're both planning for emergencies, but you're also getting used to the topic, right? So
right.
as you progress in life, maybe you get married, maybe you have children, maybe you move states, you go to another country. Those
Mhm,
are natural touch points, right? That I can then have with them and say, have you thought about a will? Have you
mhm,
considered uploading your insurance policies? So it
mhm.
helps me organically develop a relationship with an audience that I think is going to be essential in really pushing this forward in a positive way.
I love it. So you have 3 children. Have you had to you have one child that is going off to college or
I
okay,
do. And
okay.
really, that helped my thinking around the topic, right? Because when you're
Mhm.
in a real lived experience at the time, you
Uh-huh.
can bring that. I'm so sorry. I'm
It's
going to
okay.
start that one over. I don't know
It's
why this is doing that. Okay. So
mhm.
I do. I have a college student myself,
Uh-huh.
and she'll be going off to college in the fall. And
Wonderful.
I think I started down this path before she was a senior in high school. But
Okay.
having her be in that stage really made this much more meaningful for me in terms of having that lived experience, right?
Mhm.
So yes, she's going off. And so each thing that I talk to my audience is about right now, I'm also going through
You're
myself.
doing.
Yes, exactly. And
Right,
I get the benefit of the real world experience in doing it, including the obstacles that we're facing as we get necessary documents in place and filing
right.
those where we need to. So yeah, that has been an incredible part of the journey, quite frankly. And it's given me also a way to memorialize the memories that she and I are creating together along this process. So I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely. And it takes a mama bear to go through these things, with their own children and realize, okay, somebody else must be going through this also. And so
Yeah.
for you to be able to reach out and just kind of say, hey, these are some of the things that I've experienced. And from my background as an attorney, being able to share with people how to prepare and even, provide those services for them, I think is wonderful. That's why I wanted to have you join today.
Yeah.
Uh, but I experienced that something, with my son where he was playing football. And so, naturally, how physical and how dangerous the sport can be. And so, for me, when he was going off to school, signing the contract and the scholarship paperwork and all, I put my name down and my number as one of a contact number, and I didn't realize that once he was going off, even though I signed all the papers and we were all involved, the college coaches had come to the house and was like, let your son come here and we're going to take care of him and anything you need and any questions you have. I didn't realize that that was pretty much it was a speech and it was something that they said if I ever needed to know anything or needed any information to call. I didn't realize though that legally, they were not obligated to tell me a lot of things, whether it was, dealing with the tuition or his grades, even medically. And then we encountered a situation where he was injured. And I didn't know because, of course, they don't have to tell you.
Mhm.
And then the boys, when they're playing football, they don't always want to tell you, every little thing that's going on. And I just happened to get a phone call from the doctor's office. Mistakenly, they were leaving a message for him, but they left the message for me. And then I
Mm.
realized that he had been injured to the extent that he had to have surgery. And so made the call and said, okay, I'll be there at his doctor's appointment. And that was how I was able to be included, in his medical treatment, etc. And so you speak about the fact that when they turned 18, the doctors, if it's a medical emergency, they are not obligated, even HIPAA, prohibits them from discussing things. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You have such a rich experience there to
Oh,
borrow from,
yes.
it sounds like. Yes. So I think it's important to recognize that once a person turns 18, under the law, they're an adult for the most part, right?
Right.
And as a result, federal laws then protect their medical privacy. So I imagine what
Mhm.
you went through. And I think one of the mistakes that parents make is believing that being next of kin will be enough. And it's
Right.
true that if you don't have any planning in place, some states do provide for next of kin rights, but those rights are limited.
Mhm.
It sets out the order of who can be notified, who can be involved in decisions. but it doesn't take into account conflicts between potential decision makers, right?
Right.
So, what if you're both parents and statutorily you have the same right, but you disagree on what should happen, right?
Mhm.
The other limitation is that most statutes significantly limit what next of kin can decide. So, for
Mm.
instance, in most states, a next of kin could not decide whether or not you keep life sustaining treatment, right? And that's very significant.
Yes.
Sure, as parents, we have very strong feelings about that, right? You
Mhm.
don't get to automatically decide that without physician input and alignment. And that can also differ in terms of what you want, right?
Right.
So there are these little nuances that, unless you're in the situation, you may not fully appreciate that while you have next of kin rights, they aren't expansive and they aren't a guarantee that you're going to be able to do what you need and, more importantly, do it quickly.
Hmm. So, in the kit that you provide, um, what are some of the types of what paperwork would you prepare for the parent or family member to be able to make such decisions and being included?
Absolutely. So the toolkit really is intended to be a guided process that the parent and the young adult engages in together, right? Because this isn't about controlling your child
Mhm.
at all. It
Right.
really is about having a meaningful dialogue with them so that you understand what their wishes are and what they would want to happen if there were an emergency. And then helping them facilitate that through several legal documents that I think are really essential. My daughter has them and I recommend them for all college students. One
Mhm.
is the HIPAA authorization. HIPAA allows you to get access to medical information and records.
Mhm.
A medical power of attorney, which gives you the ability to then make decisions based on what it is that you learn. Similarly, a financial power of attorney, which gives you the ability to, as you say, conduct business on their behalf if they can't, right?
Mhm.
And then finally, it's just a simple will. And this says, if the inevitable were to happen, which none of us are planning for that, right? But
Right.
if it were to happen, here is
Mhm.
who I want in charge, and here is where I want my things to go. So those are kind of the essential sets of documents, and the toolkit walks you through those.
Mhm.
As well as the FERPA form that will be important for schools because they administer their records under a separate law.
Okay. And do you have any particular circumstances, that you were involved in where it really did help that particular family to navigate through something like this?
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
So I can think of a very practical example. So, one issue you have is when you're sending your kids out of state for college, right? More than likely, they're setting up local medical providers. But what's
Mhm.
going to be important is that those local medical providers are also able to communicate with the doctors that are in your state of origin, right?
Mhm.
So I had a mom who had a HIPAA release. And so as a result, she was able to go in person to her daughter's prior doctors, get records, and supply those records to her new doctors locally so that the two of them could be a team, right, in the medical decisions that were happening. So without that HIPAA authorization, she would not have been able to get those records. So that's just a very simple example of when a HIPAA authorization might be important for a college student.
Yeah, well, that's important, and it really is something that people aren't thinking about. You're thinking about everything else, getting them settled in the dorm, how how they're going to eat, just making sure that they're set up to deal with this new life as a college student and adult, and you are not thinking about things like that. And these things happen in an instant sometimes where you just all of a sudden have to help your child navigate. And so that's amazing. Well, I love it. Uh, how do you suggest, since you are going through this yourself, how do you suggest parents introduce the conversations to get the kids on board with understanding the importance and also being a willing participant?
Yeah, actually, obviously, I had to think through this exercise myself because I needed
Right,
to have a conversation with my daughter, and it's
right,
really not a decision that parents should be making for their children in isolation, right? It really is an
right.
interactive conversation, and so the toolkit really starts with that. Here are
Mhm.
prompts that will help you transition into this conversation with your child because they aren't thinking about it, because we aren't thinking about it, right?
Right.
So, one of the very first questions is, do you know that now you're 18? There are some things legally mom or dad can no longer do for you. They may
Mhm.
not even realize it themselves, right? So I
Right.
think it's important to start the conversation at the base level, understanding that now that you're 18, there are just some things that I want to support you in that I won't be able to. And here
Mm.
they are. And so that's a really good intro into it. And I think most kids intuitively understand that although this is a different phase for them, they're still going to need parental support, right?
Yes.
And frankly, in the case of my daughter, she wants my input. She makes those decisions, but she often seeks my input no matter what the topic is, right? I think we all can relate to that. Um,
Right.
so I think when she connected, okay, I'm 18, so legally my parents don't have this right, but I want them to.
Right.
Naturally, her question was, okay, so how do we fix it, right? And then you go from there.
Great. Well, it's wonderful when you do have a child who understands that they still need your help because my son was quite independent and he was a little different in that, he figured, Mom, they got this, Mom, it's done, it's taken care of. I don't have to worry about that. And I kept having to reinforce that, okay, just because you are on campus and they say that they're going to do this and take care of you and everything, it does not mean that I'm hands off. And it doesn't mean that you don't need that other person who really is in your family, who has your back in a different way to be included and to be help you prepare because as you said there are so many things that they think they know and they think they're ready for but they're really not.
No, absolutely. And when you talk about your son, of course, I speak to all different kinds of parents, right? And they all have
Right.
different kids with different temperaments. And so that made me chuckle a little bit. My
Uh-huh.
first question is, who is the they that you're talking
Right.
about? And even if they can identify the they, are you sure that they understand what you would want, what your values are, and how you would want this executed? The answer is probably no.
Right.
Um, and then, secondly, I think for those strong willed kids who really want to resist their parents holding on, that's okay because you
Right.
don't have to designate a parent. It just needs to be
Mhm.
someone you trust who is an adult that
Mhm.
you're able to share your wishes with, who can act on your behalf. So, if there's the parental resistance, I think
Right.
there's still an opening to explain it doesn't have to be a parent as long as
Right.
it's someone that you trust.
Yeah. And maybe that is it. It is the parental resistance because my son, of course he thinks I'm, much. He thinks I'm doing too much until he gets to a place and then calling me mom.
Yes, no, absolutely. I have 2 sons as well, so I'm sure my experience with them will be different than my experience was with my daughter.
Yeah, that is true. So I'm just thinking about the fact that this is probably even more of a challenge sometimes when you have two parents who maybe aren't in the same household
Mhm.
and maybe have different opinions and whatever the circumstances as far as how the child has been living and who's doing what have you ever had a situation or what are your thoughts on two parents living separately who might have different opinions? How would they handle something like that?
Yeah, I think when you talk about different family dynamics, the
Hmm.
pre-planning becomes, in my opinion, almost even more important because
Yes.
essential to the planning process is the discussion. And you want to have those discussions when you don't need them. You don't want
Right.
to have the discussions when the emergency is happening, right? So
Mhm.
much of what I coach families on is being willing to have the conversations before you need them, because that
Mhm.
allows everyone to get on the same page, right? Including the person you'll be making the decisions for, which is the student, right? So
Right.
it's not a battle of the wills or a battle of preferences. It really
Mhm.
is about Now that our child has an emergency and is unable to make decisions, how can we carry out what our child would have wanted, right? So then
Right.
you take out kind of the individual personalities,
Mhm.
potential conflict, because we now know what we're working from. So
Mhm.
conversations are incredibly important. I go back to the next of kin conversation we had, right? So
Mhm.
in a statute, you're going to have a list of people who can make some limited decisions, as I mentioned. Typically, first, that's a spouse. Many of our college students will not have a spouse.
Mhm.
And then it is adult children, right? But we're already starting to get into conflict because we can have more than one adult child, but our college students probably don't have an adult child. And
Right.
then you have parents, which is where all of us will find ourselves. And even
Mhm.
parents that live in the same house may not agree on what to do in a medical emergency. So I
Mhm.
really think it's important to have that interactive discussion early, to do it as
Right.
part of your planning. None of us are wishing that it will happen. None of us are expecting to need it. But it's
Mhm.
surely one of those conversations that is extremely valuable if you do find yourself in that situation.